Evergreen content is content that is perpetually relevant, much like the way evergreen trees retain their leaves all year around. Interesting and relevant content that does not become dated is a large component of being found online by search engines. Like a podcast. Take this podcast. So remember, you do a podcast with someone. Yay! What do you do with it afterwards? You're hoping that that person is going to be great at marketing. And maybe what you said in this podcast was amazing, but they suck at marketing. Well, how can you take this information and funnel it down the path to gain new business? So, if possible, download the file. Likely most podcasts are at this point. You can download the file or take the embed code and post it on your own website. If not, just take the link out here, like it says, and put it on your site. Create a post about this with a link out to the other page. Here's a great example of this. This is using the tool Libsyn, where Chef Chris Hill was interviewed by Eric on Restaurant Unstoppable. Now, maybe Chris has a bigger following than Eric. Well, for Chris to share this and put this on his site, he's more likely to gain more attention for it. And then, of course, schedule it out. Now, let's say you have been on a ton of different podcasts and you have your own podcast. It's just a great way for you to share it over and over and over again. And all that's likely evergreen content. And why is this so important? It's pretty simple, because the more you can educate people, the more you can provide value to people, the more likely they're going to stay on your website longer or stay on your social channels for longer, go back and look at you as a source. If you can do all those things, once you basically say, hey, I also have this tool, service, company, product, whatever that might be valuable for you, they're going to sit there and go, oh, this guy's provided or girl has provided a ton of value for me. I'm going after it. And I want it. So Leah says, completely agree on reviews. Nowadays, people buying decisions are more heavily influenced on online reviews. Absolutely. And very much so if it's like a restaurant, right? I mean, how many people, my buddy actually runs the local Yelp community here. And he says that, the top restaurants are the ones that have really high Yelp reviews. And so he goes in and tries to make their Yelps better because he realizes that those companies that do well on there have a better shot of growing and whatnot. Remember, people are lazy, so the more work you can do for them, the more likely they are to succeed. All right, here's an interesting way to look at podcasts too. Think of podcasts as a fraternity. And what if you could work with those people to grow your brand? So find other talks from the same podcast and reach out to those people. Share their stories. Maybe they will reciprocate. Use this to build new friends. Again, think of the fraternity as this is the fraternity of podcast guests. This can be used with the podcast that you've been on or the podcast that you might have. Or if you've never done any of those, find a podcast that you like and reach out to the people who have been interviewed there. Again, creating relationships. Here's a podcast here where you can find someone. You can find this person's information. We're going to find Ashley. Then we Google her. And then we reach out to her because we get her email. And we say, hey, Ashley, I listened to your episode on the podcast. I want to tell you how awesome you are. You're creating a relationship.